joy to be here. And I just invite you for a few minutes to go along a sentimental journey. Over 50 years ago, I met the most positive, enthusiastic woman I've ever known. I immediately became part of her family. We played poker every Friday night. Sometimes I'd win. We celebrated holidays together, and we enjoyed a wonderful friendship. Her name was Jo Ray Davis. Jo Ray visited me in the hospital in 1969, shortly before my cancer surgery. She arrived just after a minister of a very fundamental church had told me that the reason I had cancer was because I was getting a divorce, and God did not approve of divorce. Jo Ray walked in with a little devotional book. It was Daily Word. She invited me to attend the Unity Church that she was active in, and I did begin to attend Unity of Fort Worth. I found there that there were teachings, principles that I say literally saved my life. Because of my involvement there, I was very fortunate to help a Unity Church start in Wichita Falls, Texas. One Sunday morning, Jo Ray called fairly early, and she said, "Carol, we need a Unity Church in the Mid-Cities area. I have 3 little kids, and it's just too hard to get them up, get them dressed, go to Fort Worth, Dallas, or Arlington." And you have to remember that 360 was not even thought of at that time. So to go to Arlington from the Mid-Cities was a little of a trek. Jo Ray was very convincing in everything that she did. And from that phone call, the dream of Unity Church of Northeast Tarrant County began. We ran an ad in a weekly newspaper advising that a new group was forming, and 13 people responded to the ad. We met once a week around the dining room table in the Davis home, and we planned and envisioned what we thought a Unity Church in the Mid-Cities area could and would be. We gave seed money each week that we met. It allowed us to have hymnals. Now, this is in the olden days. It allowed us to have hymnals and bulletins and supplies for our youth education and to pay child care for the small ones. The first time we met, which was September 12th, 1982, we were in a hotel in Bedford. It was a marvelous day. We had a bookstore, we had child care, we had our youth program. At the beginning of the church, the Association of Unity Churches, under the direction of Reverend Dr. Charles Neal, agreed to be our sponsor. And then because of some events that happened, we needed some local sponsors. So the Reverends Frank and Margaret Pounders, who were at that time co-pastors of Unity Way Church in Dallas, agreed to be our sponsors. Margaret spoke at our first service, and Joe Allen played the piano. He agreed to do it for 1 week. He stayed for 9 years before he pursued other endeavors. We moved from the hotel in Bedford to the Holiday Inn in Hurst. And we were doing church out of the storeroom of the Holiday Inn and the trunk of my car. We had our bookstore. We had our child care and our youth classes. We had a piano that they let us keep there, and we were on our way. Following our time at the Holiday Inn, we rented a building on Precinct Line Road in Hurst. Precinct Line Road at that time was a 2-lane country road. It was very undeveloped. We would tell people to go on Precinct Line, not to the end of the world, but that from our parking lot you could see the end of the world. And there we would be. We were fortunate to lease a second building, and then we purchased both of them. Challenging times came to the church. We were no longer able to pay the entire monthly mortgage. The individual who had financed the building agreed to a lesser amount, and that was working for us. It was a handshake agreement that he made with the president of the board of directors. When the individual was diagnosed with a very fast-spreading disease, he asked his heirs to meet the board president, the board secretary, and me in his home. His one request from his heirs was that they allowed us to stay in the church, whatever it took. Shortly after his death, I was served at my home early one Wednesday morning with foreclosure papers. And I was astonished. Needless to say, I called the board. We came and met, and were trying to figure out what we would do. And as we were looking at perhaps the church closing, we also kept this in mind. We had done what no other group had done. For 7 years, we had offered the principles of unity to the Mid-Cities area. And so board members, congregants, Mike and I, we drove the roads out here, Hearst, Euless, Bedford, Colleyville, Grapevine, Southlake, looking for another place where we could be. It seemed impossible. And we did find our peace. And then, miraculously, one of the realtors who was on the board of directors heard of a little building in Southlake, 1970 East Dove Road. It was owned by Lonesome Dove Baptist Church. They agreed that we could purchase the building, provided we could get enough commitments in addition to what people were currently committing and giving to the church each week to cover the mortgage. We did. The people have always responded. We started a Prosperity Plus group, and the group that had made the extra commitment would meet on Saturday mornings. Board members would furnish breakfast. We would have a time of exploring a prosperity idea. It was a marvelous time. We had 3 days between Christmas, closing on the property, and moving New Year's to move into our new building. And in those 3 days, we had one of the most severe ice storms that the area has ever known. We had to get out. Once again, the people responded with trucks, cars, warm coats. We moved from Precinct Line Road to Southlake. We had, at that church, our whole building was from the front of these stairs to the back wall. We did all of our church in that space. We had a sanctuary. We had offices. We had a bookstore. We had a fellowship hall. We had a kitchen. We had restrooms that no one used because there was no insulation. And sound does carry. It does. And our beloved Sherry Pratt did sound in the baptismal. We were grateful that the Baptist had a baptismal for Sherry. Gary Fickus was mayor of Southlake at the time. He's now county commissioner for Precinct 3, which includes Grapevine, a wonderful friend to the community, a fellow Rotarian, and a dear friend of ours. During our time at Dove Road, we continued to look for property. Somehow we knew that there was something more, someplace else for us to be. One day at Rotary, a realtor was sitting next to me and told me of about 6 acres in Grapevine that he knew was going to be for sale. He drove me to this location, and I looked at the undeveloped land. There were just some concrete steps where the family who owned the property once had their home. I called the board and we met together that evening. We sat in the back of the SUV of Wallace Craig and said, could this be it? Is this where God wants us to be? Is it any way it could be possible? And it was. We purchased 5.825 acres for $345,000. Carol Miller, who is now Carol Miller Perry, President of the Board of Directors, and I signed on behalf of the church. Once again, the cold showed up, and on a very cold December morning in 1996, we were to break ground on our property. City council members called me and asked if we could postpone it, and I said no. If we don't break ground, we're going to have to pay taxes on the building that we are planning and the property. And so the community and the congregation, once again, showed up in our warm clothes. We chose an architect, a contractor, and the process began. We envisioned the building by laying it out with balloons. We carpooled after one church service, and each person went to their Sunday school class, to the sanctuary, to the bookstore where they'd volunteer, to the office that they would be occupying. And it was truly an exciting day to see what was possible for us. We laid the foundation, and the building began to take shape. Due to financial constraints and additional code requirements by the city, we had to take on some of the work ourselves, more than we had planned to. We had always planned to be invested in the process. The most expensive part was painting inside the building. And so we said, we can do that. Early on Saturday mornings in the dark, because we got here early, it was hot summer. We went from very cold to very hot in this process. But in the heat of the summer, we met up here very early to start painting. We didn't have electricity yet, so Wallace and Faye Craig rented some battery-operated tall standing lights, and we began to paint this building. We were hot stuff till we saw the sun come up and the gaps in the paint. So we laughed, and we got to work filling in the gaps. Our stained glass window was put in, and our vision was made manifest. Then came our landscaping, and finally, we moved in. Funding for the 13,116 square foot building was through issuance of $920,000 in church bonds through American Church Trust. We sold Dove Road for $195,000, and we dedicated our building September 21st, 1997, and we had a September to remember. We had a barbecue and a dedication service, and we were so proud of what together we had done. Throughout the building project, we had made the commitment to tithe because we are a tithing church, and we continue to tithe through the money that was put to the building fund. The board chose to tithe to other churches in the process of either renovating a building or building a building. Some of them were unity churches throughout the United States. Most of the tithes went to churches in our area that were in the process. We continue to know that we serve a purpose, that we can support one another, that we can respect each other, that there is unity in diversity. One Monday morning, a gentleman came to the front door. He was a minister. He had beside him a deacon, and that's the one time I really wished we had deacons, because I felt like I was outnumbered. He had an envelope in his hand. It had the return address of Unity Church. He opened the envelope, and he pulled out a check. He said, I have just one question for you. If we deposit this check, is it going to clear? I assured him it would. Tears rolled down his face. He said, this is a miracle. If we hadn't received these funds, we would have had to stop our project. Our mortgage payment was $10,000 a month. exhale. $10,000 a month. It's paid for now. The bonds were refinanced in 2002, providing for the start of Hughes Road, Montessori. We also sold 1.75 acres at the back of the property for $285,000. There were a number of easements back there, and there was a very expensive environmental impact study that was going to have to be provided. The church also received $92,754.40. I love numbers. From a signing bonus with Chesapeake Exploration in 2008 for the mineral rights on our property. This too was applied against the mortgage. In January of 2012, we owed $100,000. Some individuals came and said, if we gave the church $50,000, how would you secure $50,000 in matching funds? Well, we set a plan in place. We presented it to the prospective donors, and they agreed. Then at the annual meeting, February 2012, we presented it to the congregation, who responded very quickly and very generously. On May 21st, 2012, we paid off the mortgage. $1.3 million was paid in 15 years, saving the church 10 years of interest. You did that. Thank you. Carolyn Bates was the president of our board of directors. She and I thought that someone might clap for that. I thought it was big. Maybe it looks different if you're going through it on this side than after the fact. Carolyn Bates was president of the board. She and I were privileged to give the check to Ken Cummins, who was president of H Bank, Texas. On the 30th anniversary of the church, when we burned the mortgage, I was completely surprised when the Reverend Carroll Record Scholarship Fund was announced. I had no idea that that was even possible or that anyone was even thinking about it. Currently, it has supported 49 graduating seniors of this area, unless they attend YOU and are active in the church, and it can be from any area. $95,000 has been awarded to graduating seniors. It's still in effect, and Ganera still chairs that, and she will accept your checks, cash, credit cards, so that it continues. All through the life of the church, we've enjoyed so much. Voices of the choir, food, fun, fellowship, our youth, community involvement, including in part furnishing food to Grace. We were known as the Spam Church. Supporting families in the Transitional Housing Project, giving to I Can Still Shine and Church on the Slab, mentoring at Grapevine Middle School. Hundreds of young people have been blessed through the mentors, and at one time, we had 49 active members mentoring in GMS. A prison ministry was established. I remember the phone call. We were still on Precinct Line Road. It was a Wednesday evening right before class. A gentleman from the federal prison called. I hoped it wasn't my family they were calling about. And he wanted to know if we would start a ministry at Federal Correctional Institute in Fort Worth. I told him that I didn't know how to do that, but we would engage in it. For over 30 years, I and volunteers took weekly classes and Sunday services to FCI. One of the inmates, Dennis Young, who was really the force behind requesting for a New Thought group to begin at the prison, went to Unity Seminary and became an ordained minister after he was released. He served churches in Houston and Kansas. He's since made his transition And once again, this church is the one that impacted every person that Dennis impacted. We were recognized by Grapevine Colleyville ISD and received the Outstanding Community Partnership Award. The church received the John Templeton Radio Grant. We had 60-second spots on the radio stations in the area. We also received the first Voice of Unity Award for Excellence in Broadcasting in 1991. And we were on the cable channels that showed our Sunday services. We did so much. In November 2018, I retired. Many people have shared in our success, and I'd like for us to see some of those now. We have been blessed by other spiritual leaders, including Lowell Swindler, Bill Brooks, Geo Downer, and your minister, Linda Taylor, who served here from 2001 to 2010 and then returned to lead you in 2021. We have supported 2 individuals through Licensed Unity Teacher process, John Rouser, who now serves Unity of Southeast Kansas in Kansas City, and Gigi Johnson, who serves this congregation. We've been uplifted by many amazing musicians and singers, and so many others who have given of their time, talents, and treasure. So many who have shared of their commitment and their love and their support. One of the things that is important to me, and I told Reverend Linda that I added this, during the height of the AIDS epidemic, our church aligned with AIDS Interfaith Network. We agreed to be a care team for individuals who are diagnosed with AIDS. Steve Thorpe was active in that. One of the families that I still remember so well, a young couple in their 40s. He had received a contaminated blood transfusion. They had a special needs child, and they needed some support. We mowed their yards. We furnished food. We babysat. And we embraced them free of judgment and full of love. And that's what this is about. You know, for over 40 years, we've been building a church, or so we thought. In truth, the church has been building us. The church has been raising us to new levels of consciousness of who we are. The church and its people have been raising us to what is possible in our lives that we never imagined, and what is possible in the community and the planet that we share. I pray that we continue this journey as we raise ourselves and others free of judgment and full of love, because it works.
Well, it is now our opportunity to share with our financial good with Center of Unity. In just a few moments, the ushers are going to invite you to come up row by row. We're part of the flow, both physically as well as what we share with this. So we ask that you would place your gift in the larger basket, and then to also receive an affirmation to support you, to give you something else to contemplate as you go through this week and the weeks to come. These are all Richard Rohr ideas that invite us into a greater understanding and awareness of who we are and who we have come here to be. You know, it has been a journey of generosity over these last 40 years. It is the community that has allowed all of this to unfold, and we just continue to give thanks for the ways in which you give on this day and the ways that lead us forward. So let us take these gifts into our hands and into our hearts and bless them. Together, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, Father, Mother
Peace
God.
on.
Peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our mother, family all are we. Let me walk with my family in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. Every step I take, let this be my glorious vow. To take each moment and live each moment with peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it
And as we go into this day, into this future, we go knowing that we have been equipped with all we need to do to continue to be a space of love and light for our world, and we go knowing our prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Have a beautiful day. Join us in fellowship.